Welcome back to our footwork series. Last week we covered slab and vertical terrain, so that's going to be 5 degrees to 0 degrees, and today we're going to cover steep terrain, and I'm going to say 0 to 45-ish. Next week we're going to go over angles past 45 degrees, but we're going to talk slightly overhanging to overhang. So we have these two walls behind me here where we've got some example boulders, and we're going to talk about the same concept, pushing and pulling with your feet. This is the main focus. And I'm going to show you what that looks like on this type of terrain as opposed to on the slab. Because this gets a little bit more intense in your upper body, this is where we can really lose a lot of power from our legs because we're so focused on our upper body. I think this gets more and more exacerbated as the angles get steeper because it gets harder and harder to hold onto the wall. But today we're going to see what does pushing and pulling with our feet help us with in this type of terrain. Okay, so this wall is about 45 degrees overhanging, and this is a pretty standard angle that you'll find in a lot of climbing gyms. This angle here is where, for example, a lot of the boards are standardized at 40. So this 40 to 45 range is what you'll see a lot of gyms, boards climb at. And a few things I'm going to talk about before I get on the wall is your shoes. Now, you don't need to worry too much about this if you're just getting into climbing, but if you've been climbing for a little bit longer and maybe you've had one pair of shoes and you're looking to get another pair, and you start to see a lot of shoes are described as aggressive. What does that mean? So the aggressive shoe has a little bit of a downturn. Really aggressive shoes also have a turn inwards. They go in this way towards your big toe. Now these shoes are designed essentially to help you toe in this type of terrain. As the wall gets steeper, your feet want to pick off the wall faster. So if you can imagine my foot on the wall here, it's a lot harder for me to keep this tension here. And if I don't press into the foot, my feet will fall out and I'll end up dangling like this. Now, as the holds get smaller, this is an example of a pretty normal foot. You have to do the same thing. You have to push in really hard. And this shoe and others like it have a little bit of a toe bump. Now that toe bump helps you literally grab with your foot. So this concept with these shoes, we're trying to practice this and use the technologies in these shoes to help us climb better. And to do that, we have to first start by focusing in this technique. Now, it doesn't look like a particular thing when you watch a really good climber climb. They just kind of flow up the wall and you're like, how did that happen? Well, essentially what they're doing is they're using the core tension all the way down into their legs, into their knee, into their ankle, into their foot, and into their big toe. So if you can think about this in this steep terrain and then use that to maneuver your body left and right, up and down, this is going to open up a lot of possibilities for you to solve problems on the wall. So I'm going to go over some more examples on another type of terrain, which is slightly overhanging. So we'll go over here real quick. Now the concepts over here are going to be, again, they're relatively the same, but I want to have this wall as an example as well. This wall is 10 degrees overhanging or 12 degrees overhanging. So just slightly steep. Now in this slightly steep terrain, again, it's going to be a mix between what we were just talking about with the 45 and the slab, where your arms are starting to feel a little bit more of the gravity pulling you off the wall, but we can still really perch over a foot. So example, on this orange foot, because it's so large, I can put quite a bit of my shoe on this, and I can actually get my hips over this hold and weight it completely. It's a lot harder to do that on the 45 unless there's a massive foothold or a massive volume. So on this type of terrain, you can really get your hips involved in a different way than you can on the 45. So this volume and this volume both have these orange feet on them. What I'm gonna think about is how do I get my hips over here into this position? What this does essentially is gets all of the way into my feet. I'll show you the difference between standing on these holds with my hips to the side versus if I can get my hips over them. And I'm not saying you should always do this. There's always this time and a place for these types of moves. Now, I could just walk through like this and pull over to this hold. Or what I could do, I'm gonna move my feet first. So I'm gonna push on my right and I'm gonna get under these holds. Now what I'm doing instead is dangling on the holds as opposed to dead pointing past them. If I do this, I could peel off the holds, but if I get my hips over, I can now just say under the holds. This is a much more passive and less time and energy consuming if you can do it. I need a second, I'm pumped. We're gonna ramp it up a little bit. Yellow V7, V8, I'm gonna talk about now. In the 45 terrain, pushing and pulling with your feet really is going to feel harder because again, you're gonna end up in more tense situations. So for this boulder, the crux bit here at the beginning, the hold I'm going to is facing the wrong way. It feels really hard when you're spanned like this and your holds don't give you compression. Because this hold here is facing away, what I'm gonna think about is I'm gonna try to push as hard as I can with this foot to put my body position into a better ending position. What that better ending position is gonna look like, it's not this, it's gonna be this. If I can engage my shoulder more by using my foot to get there, it's gonna feel a lot better. All right, so I've got a few footholds here. Now I'm up into this hold and immediately I'm gonna push over into my foot. Now if I don't push, this is what happens. I just kind of get stuck and I can't progress any bit further. So this higher foot, luckily is in-cut, allows me to push and force my body into the position. If you try to use your arms for this type of move, unless you are significantly stronger, potentially than the boulder that you're climbing on, probably gonna be out of luck on that one. So again, I used my foot to push my body into the desired ending position. Now the reason I'm framing it like that is because again, this is just an example boulder at a climbing gym. Whether you're at your gym, you're outside, wherever you are, you've got to solve the problem on your own. So if you can identify the position you want to end in, reframe your thinking. Think, how can I push my body into that position? How can I pull my body into that position? As opposed to, do I need to pull harder in my arms? Reframing our mind, thinking about our feet, our footwork, pushing, pulling. It gives you a lot of options that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have. Walk the feet up, Gaston, push into the foot, grab the next hold. Not much footwork at the top of that boulder, but you get the idea. We're over here on another angle now. So this was 30 degrees overhanging, I believe. Yep, 30 degrees. Again, really common angle you'll find in the gym. This angle, again, is gonna be similar to the 40 or the 45, a little bit less intense in terms of your overall sensation of gravity pulling you off the wall. So we're gonna just talk about a few things over here. One, I wanted to find a boulder with some bad footholds. So this V6, V7 is made out of real stone. But I'm gonna give you an example of what you wanna be thinking and your thought process in using footholds like this, really small. You have to think about keeping the tension in. It's a very practiced technique that you wanna get good at. So for toeing in, I'm gonna take my shoe off so we can see. In general, on a small foothold like this, again, the power comes from that big toe. The shoe is gonna come to a point and we wanna put that point on the foothold. Now the angle in which you attack it is gonna depend on a million things, but for this hold, if you look, we're gonna think as much pressure in this left foot as we can, time this. So what I'm doing, I'm using my right foot in the wall, I'm pulling over my knee to go up to this crimp. Again, if I just use my arms, it's significantly harder because you have to use all the muscle. So instead, a little bit of muscle, but most of that is coming from that foot to propel me and grab that next hold. So in the terrain we covered today, 10 to 45 degrees. Same thing as last week. We're starting the conversation about what footwork looks like as a big picture in pushing and pulling. If our arms are doing all the work, you're gonna seriously get really, really tired and also it's gonna hold you back a little bit. So this concept, pushing and pulling, really starts to feel different as the walls get steeper. Next week, we're gonna cover what 45 and steeper looks like. Not everyone has access to climbing in this type of terrain in their gym, but if your gym has like a cave feature or the prow similar to what we have behind us here in that 50, 55, 60 or steeper terrain, this is where towing in is a requirement right out the gate. First thing you do when you get on the wall is you have to tow in really hard and start pushing and pulling immediately. So in the middle terrain, we want to think about, okay, we're going to use power, but in a slightly different way than we normally do. We want to think about where does that power come from, thinking about that big toe. We don't want that ankle to collapse too much, but we also don't want to be on our tiptoes, so find that good balance. And like I said earlier, always there's going to be exceptions to the rules. We're just talking basic concepts, giving you some examples, and then you can take those examples to your project outside, your project in the gym, or on the boards, whatever it is. This is board climbing bread and butter, but that's a video for another time too. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll catch you next week for super steep terrain footwork.
For forearm capacity. Look at those veins though. How did you guys find this out?